Well, I see, Michael, you've gotten your backdrop further along than I have.
Actually, it was an aborted attempt to do a virtual background, and I'll show you what it looks like and this is why it's aborted.
Oh wow, yes, that's fantastic. Maybe that's why they go with green.
Yeah, so I was just trying to MacGyver it, and that's the one I had. So
Michael's nickname is now Locutus Aborg.
Perfect.
What's up, people? Yeah. Yeah, so we can just do some casual conversation here, you guys, for another few minutes while we open it up.
Seeing some new faces.
Hello, I'm Mark Allen. I got introduced to TAG Zoom capabilities last night with a very fascinating cybersecurity group meeting talking about zero trust, which I never heard of. But that was an eye-opener for me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just going to listen and I'm going to mute.
Sure.
Hi, I'll say hi. I'm Dirk. I work for SPIE, and I dropped into the Discord a couple weeks ago. Just wanted to check out kind of a new communications format. I'm organizing a lot of virtual events now for SPIE. We're a professional society for optical engineers, and we organize 26 conferences around the world every year. So we're not doing that anymore. That's been kind of a change. So I'm just kind of in full experiment mode with virtual events and learning how to connect people. So happy to check things out. Good to see you all here.
Yeah. What do you have any learnings that you've experienced?
Yes.
Well, communication in terms of talking with volunteers. You know, like none of the events that we do would work if we didn't have a lot of volunteer support. We're doing I'm doing a training for a virtual meetup on Friday morning to try to get people kind of familiar with the Zoom interface. Not everybody uses Zoom, so doing that with a group of volunteers, and then we're going to do our first kind of large networking meetup that it's a trial. We should be next week starting a 5,000 person conference in Anaheim, which we're not going to be doing. So we're gonna see if people want to drop in and have the time to make for a virtual meetup. And so we're going to use the small group breakout room feature on Zoom, and I've identified some kind of like discussion leaders for the small group sessions, just to give people that kind of networking experience of small group conversation. You know, once you get beyond a full screen of Zoom video people, it gets real confusing to have a conversation.
Yeah. Especially if it's 6 pages. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had 50 was our largest, and that really needed small group and discussion leaders at that point. So
cool.
Are you finding any issues with using Zoom and larger groups other than the screen scrolling?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've tried to do larger groups. So our groups are very international. I've tried Skype, Google Hangouts, and none of those could handle the bandwidth. Zoom's doing something good. It's a market leader for a reason, and the call quality has been pretty good so far. I'm gonna be trying to get on the phone with Comcast today and see if I can up my bandwidth for the Monday and Tuesday sessions coming up.
Dirk, I have a question. I noticed some professional groups, the Internet Engineering Task Force, one of them, is using something called WebEx. Have you had any experience with that? Is that any better than Zoom in any category, or is it just another peer?
It's a peer. So I've used GoToMeeting and WebEx for various things. WebEx for kind of a corporate level account is about 12 grand a year. So it's pricey. One of my colleagues at USC did a pretty large meeting hosted on WebEx, and it went well. I mean, it's a solid tool. You know, they're University of Southern California, so they can write a $12,000 check pretty easily. And it's a peer, and you know, there definitely are concerns about Zoom in terms of security and you know what it's sharing. I haven't kept up with all of the things. I know that they've done a lot of patching on Zoom, but yeah, I can't tell you which one's better. I'd say that Zoom is a little bit better, like a slicker interface, I would say.
Okay.
But they're probably functionally equivalent. Anybody else have any experience with WebEx or any of these others?
Our corporate uses it, but I'm finding more and more people are spread across so many different platforms. We've got some people using Zoom, some people using Teams, some using WebEx. It's it's a grab bag because I think a lot of people weren't really intending this much work from home scenario, so we didn't have standards in place.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What I was curious at is WebEx suffered the same issue with bombing, like Zoom bombing. But we don't know because we don't use it now. None of you guys use it.
My experience is if you dig into the settings on Zoom, you can pretty much eliminate the chances of Zoom bombing. I mean, you need to put in a reg link. You need to not have your meeting ID in the URL. They patched that. So I think they're like, that was a bad publicity, and they've through a combination of things that you can do in the Zoom settings and what Zoom has done to obfuscate kind of those meeting IDs, I think that those chances are pretty low at this point.
Zoom's been really reactive to fixing issues, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a guest at a meeting yesterday, and we got bombed. There are
No
a lot
kidding.
of well, this was not TAG. This was a New York City Gay and Lesbian History Project. They're talking about the Stonewall Rebellion, and it was announced in some of the gay media, but about 10 minutes into it, we got Zoom bombed, and it took them 15 minutes to clear up the mess. Now, I was not a host, so I had no power at all. I was trying to observe it so that I could take home a lessons learned. And I think what's happening is that some of these people are, you can put any name you want. When you get into a Zoom meeting, you can make yourself any name. If they were duplicating the name, like say, for example, I'm Mark Allen right now. A bad guy comes into this meeting, says he puts his name as Mark Allen, and starts harassing the meeting. Then the host would not know which Mark Allen to kick out. And this is this is frightening to me. And you don't get IP addresses on Zoom meetings. I can't look up your IP address. I can't look up Guy's IP address or anything like that. You just have a name. Mark Allen, Michael Gary, Eric Gonza, and so forth. But anyone can use any name. And that's what's got me frightened as a host. And I'm a host at our local church, the Unitarian Church. And this is scaring me, what they're doing.
Yeah. I would really suggest limiting what people can do in terms of screen sharing. So
we do that.
It's limit the screen sharing, limit the ability for non-hosts to take control and share screens. Turn off the annotation feature, and then you can also put some limitations on the chat capability, so that people can't be abusive in chat as well. I mean, you know, you're limiting kind of a little bit of that for everyone. But the real piece is that if you're, you know, if you're sending your list out to the Unitarian Church and it's all kind of being shared within that group that's existing, you're that's a friendly audience, right? Whereas for an LGBTQ group where a general Zoom registration link is
Which is
being
what they
shared
did.
on media.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately there's shitty people out there, and
Oh, I agree, but
pardon my language, but
I agree, but I'm frustrated that why doesn't Zoom put in the IP addresses?
All right, so I'm gonna jump in.
Sorry.
We gotta we
I'm
can.
yeah,
sorry.
let's
You guys can
move
hang
this
out
on
and chat
here.
about this stuff afterwards. So we do have an open discussion at the end of this,
Okay.
and it's 12:10, so I'm gonna kick things into gear here. So we did a few minutes already of introductions, and we're gonna continue that. So just do like a 30-second introduction of yourself and what you're working on and or anything that you've learned. Mark and Dirk, you've gone. So I'm Michael Gann. I'm the executive director of TAG, and my learning of the week has really been how to and Dirk talked a little bit about this already, how to minimize the security risks in Zoom. So we were playing with that a little bit yesterday, and I got to play kicking people out, so that was fun. I'll hand it up to Garth, and then we'll keep handing it off as we go here.
I'm Garth Johnson. I work at DIS here in Bellingham. I'm the STEM person with TAG, and let's see what else is on the list here. That's pretty much it. Excited about doing these things more often, seeing some people, seeing some faces. I've been self-quarantined for a little bit longer than most. I got sick a little bit earlier on and headed home and stayed here.
All right, so no kissing Garth for a while. Eric Grimstead.
I had to unmute there quickly. Eric Grimstead, a certified business advisor at the Small Business Development Center at Western. Been helping business owners here since about 2008, trying to navigate these challenging times.
Thanks, Eric. We're gonna chat with Eric and Guy and Gina quite a bit more after this intro period, and I'll keep them quick. So Guy, cue it up to you.
Am I good?
Yep.
Guy Occhiogrosso, President and CEO of the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce. Most people have a general idea of what chambers do. So again, I will probably go into that a little bit more later. So I'll kind of donate the rest of my time to get through the introductions.
Excellent. Gina?
Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Stark. I work for the Port of Bellingham and do regional economic development for the whole county, and have been doing that just about hitting my 2-year anniversary at the port. It's gone by fast, so look forward to sharing more with you guys in a little bit.
Awesome, thanks. Chris?
My name is Chris. I'm the Canvas admin for Western Washington University. I do a lot of tech around the county, and I'm just hoping that I don't get kicked out of this room by Michael today.
Awesome. It could also be Alicia, so you don't know. That's a good seg for Alicia.
I am Alicia. I am the IT coordinator for VSH, which is a CPA firm. I also was an organizer for Linux Fest, which I may or may not go back to. I don't know.
You will.
I thought about it, and then we canceled this year.
I'm sure there'll be an opportunity next year.
Yeah, I'm going to be helping out with the TAG events in some capacity, yet to be determined.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll be sure to try to give you more opportunities. Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal, and I work for Varvid. We do live streaming for events, and we're both kind of working. It's just Aaron and I up here in Bellingham, so we are mostly working from home and some social distancing in the office, and trying to manage all virtual events where we were streaming. A lot of in-person events are doing hybrids, so looking at lots of different solutions for ways to be creative about pieces that weren't needing to be virtualized before and now are.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Early on, I reached out to Crystal and Aaron and a few other folks to get the inside scoop of what we should be doing, and they're a great resource if you have the same questions. Jenny.
Hey, Jenny Spurgeon, Assistant Director for Employer Relations at Western. So I work in the Career Services Center. I also do plan all of our events. So I can relate to Dirk. We are learning on the fly how to plan virtual events this spring and trying a few new things. So I was excited to call in and just hear what else is going on in the community.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Meg? Unmute.
It's not like I'm not doing this all day. So I'm a nerd, but totally inept. No, fun fact, Jenny, Eric, and I used to work together, which was a delight, and we still do, but in a different capacity. So I'm proud to be on the TAG board, and I work at Western and teach entrepreneurship and innovation.
Awesome. Thanks, Meg. And Tori, are you there? Give you a second.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just looking very much like a college student right now.
Good work.
I'm Tori. I'm going to Whatcom for cybersecurity. Currently working through what virtualization in the classroom environment looks like, and a lot of the students are, we're all figuring it out together, so it's quite the experience. But thankfully, we can still have TAG meetings this way.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that's a good job, everyone, on your intros. So I'm gonna basically give an overview of the cafeteria today, and then jump into some news and announcements for TAG, and then we'll roll right into our featured guests. Gina from the Port of Bellingham, Guy Occhiogrosso from Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce, and then Eric Grimstead of Western Small Business Development Center. So I'm going to try to share my screen here, see how that goes. Hopefully y'all can see that now. And for our news and announcement section, I just wanted to point out a few programs that we launched this month, as well as just give you a little tour of some of the new resources that we have. Under member resources, we have a few new pages. One is Community Hub, and we're using that today. That's Discord. And if you aren't on that now, you can get to that via this link. It'll have an invitation to our chat the chat system that we use for all of our TAG events. We also have a new mentorship program and a new consulting program, and you can learn more about these things in a more verbose way by going to our newsletter and accessing the recent newsletters of the last 4 months. For mentorship, we're really excited about this. Both the mentorship and consulting programs that we've launched this month are from the membership committee, and you can learn more about those folks from our leadership page on the website. But basically, the general idea is we are doing a intelligent match for mentees and mentors as they apply, and we're going to be doing our first batch of matches next week. And it's pretty basic process. What we are asking for mentors and mentees was to commit to 2 hours a month with each other, and essentially create that relationship. We're going to be essentially onboarding new student members into this system, and it's one of the more interesting things to them as far as the TAG member benefits. We're going to launch for spring and summer. We're going to do sort of a soft launch, and then in fall we'll sort of learn or take our learnings and do this as an annual member program. So if you are interested to be a mentor or a mentee, and I know a few folks in the room have already done so, so thank you. You can jump over to the application page, and this information is just for matching, understanding your personal and professional interests, the sort of the role and the future you're interested in, as well as what topics you're interested in either mentoring or being mentored. And then those get sent to the membership committee, and we review them and reach out to mentors and mentees that we know we have a sort of a backlog of folks that have had interest. So that's a little bit behind the scenes of how that works. And consulting is relatively similar. It's the same general process, but what we're doing here is we are providing free tech consulting for nonprofits, as well as also offering that tech consulting to the community just by donation. So if you know any nonprofit organizations, or you or yourself are a nonprofit, this is available to you. And essentially, the process is pretty similar. Go through the application process, and it's basically, who are you, how can we help, and then those go straight to me, and I organize a few TAG members that have offered to donate some of their consulting time, as well as it's one of my responsibilities to connect with them and figure out how we can help. This spawned from really the learning that several of our fellow nonprofits have furloughed employees and or laid off employees, and a few of them were in some serious tech projects that had to either halt or be canceled. So we tried to swoop in and save those. Those are those programs, and I'm going to transition. Does anybody have any questions about what we're up to? I'll give you a second. No? Okay. Let's transition into our focus for the day, coronavirus in our community. I'm going to welcome Gina Stark, and she can talk more about her role at the Port of Bellingham and the Regional Economic Partnership. Gina, are you ready for this?
I am. I was born ready. No kidding.
Let me stop sharing my screen here.
Okay.
And then we'll jump into that. Assuming I know how to do that. It likes to.
Doesn't matter how much practice you get, right, Michael?
It changes this every time it tries to change the view on me. It's all sorts of annoying. Here we go.
Michael, you're recording this, right? And you'll share out a link. I just
yeah.
had a
So,
bunch of students that were interested,
exactly.
but
Yeah, so we've recorded several of our other events, and we'll be doing some light edits and then sharing those next week, including this meeting. And of course, if something occurs that you don't want to be in that video, just let me know. I can cut it out. All right, so Alicia saved the day and stopped my host video from sharing. Thanks, Alicia. So let's jump in to the Regional Economic Partnership with Gina. We have some questions that I started off in the cafeteria channel, and we can all follow along. And if folks have other questions for Gina, you can ask those in Discord, and we'll have a Q&A session with each of our guests shortly afterwards. And if you're not the ones talking, please mute your mics. Thank you very much. All right, Gina.
Hi.
Tell us a little about yourself and what you're up to at the Port of Bellingham, and I'll queue up a few more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're the Regional Economic Development within the Port of Bellingham, but we do economic development for the whole entire county. We work with all of our small cities and our county government, as well as all businesses within the county. Before COVID, my primary sectors where I dealt a lot with the technology businesses and the recreation businesses. Now since the COVID, our team, which there's 4 of us, were put under the unified command. So that's the Whatcom Unified Command with the Department of Health, and there's all various, the sheriff's office. And so we deal with them on a everyday basis and report to them on the work that we are doing to help our businesses. So that's been like a real shift, because some of my other port stuff hasn't stopped, so one of the other main things that I did before this was our rural broadband. And so obviously, as we've been talking about this, that has totally been even more elevated. And I like to say it's my one time in my life I could truly say, I told you so. We knew that this was going to be so vital. And why did we have to fight so hard for funding? And, and now everyone's calling me all the time saying, how do we get broadband? Our students aren't able to use their Chromebooks because they don't have broadband. So I've been spending a lot of time with various entities and our PUDs and our tribes to try and get something out to those communities, especially the East County, ASAP. So it's a very short snippet of what I do. Yeah. And you're on mute. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. That's how this works.
That I never do that, so that's why I shouldn't. Thank you. So tell us more about any personal, or obviously we're going to talk more about what our organizations are doing to respond to coronavirus.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of personal impact story that you'd like to share, or similar?
For me and my family, I'm very fortunate that my family is doing well. My husband has a job where he's been able to, he does industrial insulation. So he's actually has worked on the emergency hospitals, temporary hospitals down in Shoreline, down in White Center, and is now working on a housing development for homeless vets. So I'm very blessed that me and my husband have been put into these roles where we can help our communities. So that's been really, great. I have a 23-year-old son who's in California and is amazing, and he likes to call his mom, so I don't have to worry too much about that. And we're all healthy and safe. And I've only had 2 friends that have come down sick, but they both recovered, are doing great. So I do feel very blessed. Yeah.
Awesome. A little bit more about the role you have personally, and then the role of the Port of Bellingham, and I guess and rep in sort of quarterbacking our response.
Yeah. So we've actually done a lot. One of the main things that we have done, and then I can talk about what we're transitioning into, is that we did a survey. We've done a couple of sector surveys, one for general businesses, one for fisheries, and one for ag, so that we can collect the data of what's the impact to these businesses. Because by able to do that, we can take that data and share it with our elected officials, especially at the state and federal level, to really get the resources that we need. Like we are able to say overall, these businesses have lost X amount of dollars. They've laid off X amount of people. So that's one of the things that we've done. The other thing, and one of my main roles has been kind of putting on my old hat from when I worked for the legislature, is doing government relations and communicating with our elected officials, and getting the information. It's kind of it's a great two-way street. So as stuff comes down from the feds and the state, I'm able to push that out, and then vice versa. And so it's been this great communication, and then working with all of our mayors. So I meet with our mayors on a weekly basis, and it's really has been about sharing of information and how is it best to share that information, because we've learned that everybody wants to do good, and it's so easy for everyone to kind of go off and do their own thing, and then we're all just kind of just spinning our wheels. And so really trying to put that coordinated effort together And then, Michael, as you know, one of our best tools is our Team Wacom. And so Guy's a member of that, Michael, CJ, and then we've got the tribes, we've got our community colleges. And it's just a weekly time for us to get together and also share what we are all doing so that we can, again, just coordinate better. And also just to support each other, because many of us are working 7 days a week, 12-hour days. And so it also becomes about emotionally supporting our partners out in the community. So that's kind of been a big thing that we've been doing. And then we just closed out our Washington State grants that the governor gave us for our county, $170,000, which isn't a lot. And especially because we got over 700 applications for this small pot of dollars. And so for me, on a personal basis, it's been challenging and blessing because I've been able to interact with each one of these businesses. I've replied to every single one of them, and I'm in the process of replying to them again. And I think these are going to be lasting relationships that are going to be really important. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've kind of gone through this grant period. That was your focus last week, I know. Is there a current focus and the next hurdle, the next step that you're working on?
So there's both the next hurdle and there's next steps. So the next hurdle, and again, because of, these applications and my communications, I had shared with some of these businesses that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce had this grant program, and within 24 hours, that program was closed because of the demand. So the hurdle is trying to find meaningful resources for our small businesses. They're drowning and they need a lifeline. And so it's really, I'm just shaking the rafters and again, talking to our elected saying, they need something, and they need something that's easily accessible. A lot of them have applied for the PPP and the EIDL, and I know Eric can speak to that, so I won't go too far in his lane, but they're just so frustrated, right? And so that's kind of been my hurdle, and I think it's almost become my own personal mission, to try and find as many resources as possible. And then our next step is we're transitioning into what does our new normal look like, right? How do we help these businesses build and reopen? And so what does that plan look like? So really kind of doing, looking at doing an economic recovery plan and resiliency plan, because this might not be our only way, right? So they need to be able to weather the storm in the future. And so that's what we're working on, trying to look at other countries, other cities, other states, and see what we've done. But we are in uncharted waters. But so that's kind of our next phase.
Awesome. And then I know this is hard to say, obviously, but if you had to sort of estimate the next short term, like what's the short term that you're looking at and focusing on? Is it 1 week, 1 month, 3 months? What's your purview that you're kind of aware of?
In terms of what I'm doing next?
I feel like, whatever's happening in over a month seems like so far away.
Yeah, I think so. What's been my immediate, again, is just responding and getting back to all these businesses and providing any resources. And then the other thing that I am doing is how do we get broadband out to our community, especially our East County, immediately, as soon as possible. We've even had talks about building a cell tower. What about hotspots? Like, what are the things? And so that's has been my kind of immediate this week, next week kind of a task that I am in, so those are my two buckets that I have. Yeah.
And so I'll share the regional economic partnership COVID resources here in the channel. Are there any other resources that you've been working on that have recently become available that sort of highlight on that list?
So unfortunately, there isn't, and I do encourage you to often check that list. We updated, if need be, on a daily basis. Like I just updated that, unfortunately, that the chamber grant has closed. So which was sad. So check that often. And really, the only resources that we know that the feds are going to hopefully pass and sign the package today, which will bring more dollars into those two important programs. We are asking the governor for additional funding. Within the next week or so to maybe see that the governor had found some magic pocket of dollars, and we'll get that to the small businesses. But stay tuned on that.
Excellent. And we'll close with a little Q&A. And I know Garth had one to jump in. If you'd like to jump in, Garth.
Go for it, Gar.
I was just curious, what other community groups have you found are helpful, and are you finding a good response from our community?
I am finding a really good response from our community. Like I said, our team Wacom is quite diverse, and each one of them, like Sustainable Connections, is an amazing partner, and as a resource, Eric and CJ at the SBDC are stellar partners. And then I've been really very pleased that the mayors, especially the mayors of our small cities, are an extremely helpful group, a very supportive group, and understand that we are doing what we can for their small cities. So I've been really, really blessed. John Gargett with Unified Command has been very, very supportive, and our commissioners are also just great, which helps us to do our work, right? I do know there's some economic development friends of mine who, their jobs are being threatened right now. They fear that they're going to get fired, and they're just doing everything they can to support their businesses. And so I do feel really blessed that we have an amazing partners in the county. And Guy at the chamber, rock star.
Wow, that's the best transition I could have asked for.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gina. So we'll have a little session at the end of this to maybe ask some more questions. So if anything else comes up, feel free to stick around. All right, so I'd like to introduce Guy Occhiogrosso, the CEO of Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to talk a little bit about the same theme, coronavirus. And Guy, why don't you start off by giving us kind of a brief intro to yourself and the chamber?
Absolutely. And I would say thank you, Gina, for the kind words. I would say rock star, some days maybe, most days maybe not. As I mentioned, Guy Occhiogrosso, President and CEO of the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce. I've been with this chamber for, I think, a little over 6 years now. Prior to that, still within the community, executive director of the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce for a little over 7 years. So almost 14 years in the chamber industry for our community. As far as the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce goes, our organization is approximately 120 years old. And the reason we say approximately is because apparently up until, 8 years ago, people just didn't keep very good records. So the best historian that we have in the county is Jeff Jewell with the Wacom Museum. And so generally when we have historic questions, Jeff is our go-to. So speaking of the chamber in 2020, or maybe I should say 2019 and 2020, because 2020, seems to be very COVID oriented.
Yes.
The way that we define our role as an organization is really 4 pillars. And those pillars are, again, action words that define the value that we bring to our members, our investors. And so that is advocate, educate, connect, and promote. The 4 things that you would expect, whether that's active or on behalf of your businesses from us. And so how we advocate, educate, connect, and promote since March is a little bit different than I think what we were expecting the year to look like. So is that a good overview?
Yeah,
I would say we're about, again, about 550 members. And so those members are businesses of all sizes and shapes, serving the Bellingham region, which is generally, we would say, the county.
yeah, excellent. Coronavirus topics, sort of personal or professional impact that you'd like to share.
Yeah. Personally, I think, I mean, everyone in my and our families kind of close knit aspect are safe and healthy, which is good. Definitely blessed for that. I've known a handful of folks that have been diagnosed or were pretty sure they were diagnosed, maybe not official, but they pretty sure they had it, not necessarily diagnosed, and all of whom are on the mend and getting better, which is great. As far as impact to the chamber, a lot of people, community members, their engagement and expectation of the chamber is that we produce a couple community events throughout the year. And Q2 is generally that time where most of those events happen, specifically the major events over the last few years, and including as planned, was planned for this year, Junior Ski to Sea weekend, both the junior parade and junior race, and then the Hagen 4th of July. So our office coordinates all of those events, and with the health department's recommendation for canceling events, those events have now completely disappeared along with the revenue associated with those events. So that's to the tune of about $200,000 that essentially evaporated. So our organization, of course, has to pivot and engage our business community with what they need right now, which honestly isn't events necessarily. And so we still have a robust program calendar that, again, we're pivoting just like TAG is to a virtual format. And with regards to, other revenues, our hope is our business community can survive through this, and just as TAG is membership oriented, our members can continue to fund the investment in the chamber via membership. So I would say that's how, from an organizational standpoint. One of the other, I would say, aspects of what we're known for within the business community is that connection piece of those four pillars. Our networking breakfast is generally regarded as the most well-attended monthly networking event in the county. We have anywhere between 80 and 120 participants every month. And so March, just because of the timing, we actually pivot really quickly and cancel that event. This month, I think 2 weeks ago, we held our first ever virtual networking breakfast, which I often call speed dating for business, which, again, I wish I would have never coined that term, because it defines it really well. Not in the dating aspect, but you understand what your expectation of the networking breakfast will be. And so we held that 2 Fridays ago. We had 80 registrations and about 65 participants on a Zoom call. So we regard that as highly successful, and we've done 2 other virtual events since.
Awesome. Yeah, the virtual world must be embraced for.
Well, we should have embraced it long before now as a community and society, and some of us have to a degree, but maybe not at the scope and the speed that we've had over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, the avoiding the disruption would have been nice, but
yeah, true.
So let's jump into some coronavirus topics. Your role in sort of economic recovery. I know you're one of the primary organizations that assist Whatcom Unified Command and REP.
Yeah. So I think, I can't remember if Gina said this or if you said this, Michael. You called REP the quarterback, which is fairly accurate. Like they're making the calls. They're the lead agency. Sometimes as the chamber, I feel we may be the running back at times. Sometimes we're the water boy. and sometimes I think we're the mascot. It just kind of depends upon the role that's needed at the time. Specifically regarding your question, our role as it is identified through the Economic Resiliency Plan through Whatcom Unified Command is the connection to the other small chambers. And so we essentially act as a funnel, a filter for information and getting it to the smaller chambers and then back up to the port if need be. So again, just again, flexing on one of those core values of connection and promotion and communicating that information out to our partners in the county. And again, just for those that may not be familiar with the concept of a chamber, because I know Gina mentioned the U.S. Chamber, is we're all separate. We're all separate entities. We have 9 chambers in the county with their own board, their own budget, and their own bylaws, right? So it's completely separate entities, just in association of name only. But again, very, very partner oriented, just as we are all on Team Whatcom too.
Yeah, excellent. Now that this grant period's over, do you have a current focus other than virtualizing all the things?
Yeah. When we first entered this with, again, minimal knowledge, and we know so much more now than we did 5 weeks ago, and yet I think we have so many more questions now than we did 5 weeks ago too. The more we learn, the more we know that we don't know. But with that said, is I think the speed of change is slowing. I think we can all, to some degree, read the writing on the wall and understand where we are as systems and what those systems that we've built. For example, the PPP and the EIDL loans, which again, Eric will kind of go into. We know we can refund those on a federal level, and the process probably won't change. So from a business standpoint with our members, their engagement with these systems that will truly serve as a life raft are probably built. We just kind of need to figure out how to add more fuel. And so for us,
coming.
Right, hopefully today. But for us, really, again, settling into that role of a support system for what the port is doing with our other business agencies and organizations in the community, and doing what we've always done. Again, virtualizing our programs. I think in 2019, we held just under 190, I can't remember the number, let's say 95 events or meetings throughout the calendar year. So that's a pretty big transition to virtual. And some of our programs have lives and identities of their own, such as like Leadership Whatcom program, Whatcom Young Professionals, that have their own kind of program calendar as well. So again, how do we transition and empower people to make good decisions, to get good information and good advocacy and good connection and promotion to their constituents?
Yeah, it's a huge learning experience for everyone. So it's helpful to share those learnings. And I know a lot of the folks, Team Whatcom does that specifically. And then there's lots of great relationships, and that collaboration is key. Is there a current focus that you have? What the next thing you're up to, and anything that you're projectizing?
Well, as I mentioned, since we are April 22nd, I think today, right in the middle of Q2, which again normally we would be in the throes of planning junior weekend and just starting 4th of July. So we have a little bit of I guess excess capacity, if you will, as an organization. But I think at this point is just doubling down and understanding which of those programs are going to drive value and innovating. I mean, what a great time to innovate as an organization that's in service to a select group of members. I mean, what's interesting about the chamber, as it's different from, let's say the Port of Bellingham or REP specifically, and even SBDC, very similar to TAG, is we work in partnership with our government, not for our government, right? So we work for the 550 members of the chamber. And so we can pivot pretty quickly. We can create new programs that may be COVID specific, that's educating members to members, that may be educating business to community. And so at this point, just learning what others are doing, trying to, again, stay in a lane, not step on toes, which again, in an innovative environment is really tough. But again, constant communication, and then relying on those 4 pillars. Our business community still needs advocacy. Our business community still needs quality education, whether that's from our educational institutions or from each other. And again, at the end of the day, we're still going to promote our members.
Yeah, and those relationships are key to, everybody wants those relationships to continue and grow. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, the networking breakfast, we're kind of, the plan is until we can meet in person again, we're going to meet virtually. It worked. It was different, but it worked. And then we traditionally, I mean, many people in the audience may have heard of Business After Hour. Business After Business was our program for 20 or 30 years or something like that. We kind of spun it down at the end of 2019. We were going to come back this year with a refreshed version. But since we can't meet in public, we pivoted pretty quickly and said, let's do a happy hour. And let's call it Handshake Less Happy Hour. So kind of a fun title. And again, that had 20 or 30 people on it last week, which was great. And just a chance to get to connect and meet. We've held an On Topic, which again is one of our member-to-member learning opportunities with about 20 participants. And as we all have attended ad nauseum Zoom calls with other committees and other things.
Yes.
But again, 3 programs that were member-driven, open to the membership, that again, using our metrics of success, we're successful.
Awesome. Let's close with any Q&As for Guy, if anybody has anything to ask or add.
Hey, are you doing anything? I mean, I'm not a member of the chamber right now, but like your happy hours and some of these other virtual things you're doing, Guy, are you encouraging just sort of anybody that's around to get involved? Because I know Michael just started a happy hour for TAG, so I was sort of thinking, well, maybe, does it make sense
to do a joint event?
Yeah, exactly.
We're always up for joint events. I think we have a lot of flexibility as an organization to be able to do that. Michael and I have talked about, or we were talking about, how do we do an industry close-up in 2020 in partnership again, when we can't be in physical spaces. That'll be interesting. But again, that's where we have to pivot and kind of figure out what does success look like. The first ones, so networking breakfast, handshakeless happy hour, we made them members only because I wanted to make sure it was foolproof. Because as an entity that relies on the power of a first impression, for example, I didn't want it to be clunky, and the networking breakfast, I'll own it. I don't know if anybody in the room was there. It was clunky. We had to learn on the fly really quickly. Actually, not very quickly. We had to learn on the fly. And I didn't want a potential member's first experience to be that. Going forward, specifically with networking breakfast, we're going to honor the same rules we've always had, right? We're a membership organization. We want to showcase our organization and our members to potential members. So people would be allowed to attend one for, as a guest, if you will. And just that has always been the case. I
was really more thinking about like this happy hour.
Oh, the happy hour. Again, we wanted to do the first one members only, again, for that same piece. Like, what do you do, right? What happens if you get 30 people in a Zoom call, everybody talking at once? That's not going to work. So a little bit of testing in advance. I would suspect that the happy hours will probably be open to any business in the community going forward, but we've not really made that call yet. But that's where I'm leaning, and given since most of those decisions are mine anyway. So just that's where I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the content that Guy had. There's a lot of experimenting, happening, and I think when people get more experienced and have some knowledge under their belt, I think you'll see a lot more of those collaborative things. Guy and I have already talked about how we can do those collaborative things this summer, so I'm sure look for those. Thank you, Guy. We're going to transition to SBDC, and if you have any other questions for Guy, stick around, and we'll have this open time in about 15 minutes. I'd like to introduce Eric Grimstead of the Western SBDC. Eric, take it away with an intro and kind of what you're up to there.
Sure, thank you. So Eric Grimstead, one of 4 business advisors at the Small Business Development Center at Western. So our team includes Sherry Damon, Ash Ryder, myself, and then CJ Seitz is the director. So 4 full-time advisors assisting business owners throughout Whatcom County through their complete life cycle of business, so whether that's starting, growing, or transitioning. Small business as defined by the federal government, which now we see as a very quickly moving target. Forever we've gone under the assumption that that's 500 or fewer employees, but with the disaster of the PPP program this week, we've discovered that that's quite a liberal definition to some, but we'll get into that. Personally, I've been with the organization since 2008, so seems like I started in a crisis, and hopefully I'm not leaving in a crisis. Hopefully the program continues for the foreseeable future. The SBDC at Western Washington University has been here since 1983, so do the math, 38-ish years of the program's existence. Federally funded to some degree, so it starts with SBA funding at the federal level, and then a tremendous amount of local funding support that match those federal dollars. So our funding partners locally include the Port, Whatcom County, City of Bellingham, City of Blaine, and then of course Western Washington University as our host. And yes, it does feel like a little bit of a family reunion with Meg and Jenny and myself all having done a stint previously together.
That's awesome. Personal impact of coronavirus to you and your team there. How's everybody doing?
Sure. Everybody's doing pretty well. I think each person responds to changing normals differently. So most of our work is one-on-one, personal in nature. So assisting business owners in their issues, which are usually quite personal and oftentimes emotional. It's hard to do that virtually via a Zoom meeting, even worse on just a phone call without a face, to the voice. Mm-hmm. So you don't get that personal feedback, body language, reading where somebody really might be. But all in all, I would say the clients have responded well. They've embraced Zoom as the technology platform as well. Most of what we've been doing the last couple of weeks is a lot of question and answer, as you can imagine, the common questions, which we'll probably get into. But our normal day-to-day functions with business owners throughout Whatcom County is a lot of long-term strategic focus for business owners, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to that as we transition, into recovery mode here.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the FAQs, and I served up several to CJ a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. What are the big ones that folks have? Obviously, coronavirus is on everyone's mind. Are there any specific questions that you're getting frequently?
Sure, I'd probably take them in the 2 main programs, the EIDL loan program and the PPP program. I keep thinking in my next life I'll become a branding consultant for the SBA and come up with better acronyms for programs. So EIDL, we're just sitting waiting maybe, or PPP is challenging in its own right. The questions have been, twofold usually. Which program should I apply for? Can I apply for both? If I get funding, what do I use it for? What do I do with my employees? So those are kind of the primary ones. And sometimes the programs and the language that was, rolled out was conflicting in nature. So a lot of times we've had to be interpreters from legislative language to SBA implementation language to ultimately what gets implemented on the street, if you will.
Sure. I know that there was a round of sort of grants and previous topics there. Are some folks receiving those funds and getting some relief, or are they still waiting? Do you know?
Yeah, on the good news front, I should have included this in the bio. I'm more of a glass half full kind of person than half empty. So while there are plenty of stumbles and shortcomings on some of these programs in the rollout, the good news is a lot of our local businesses are receiving funding, both on the EIDL loan side of things and the EIDL advance, which was that first pot of money that was communicated, hey, this will be just like a grant for business. You can get access to $10,000. Well, that changed in form, but those do exist. I have probably a half a dozen clients that are reporting getting both the advances and the loan commitments on the EIDL side of things. And then on the PPP side of things, since those were rolled out through our banking partners, had tremendous success, particularly with the smaller regional local banking partners in getting people funded. So the fastest response that I personally had with a client, they applied on April 3rd, the first day that the applications were being taken on the PPP side. People's Bank was the lender, and they had a funding approval in the client's inbox at 1:30 on Sunday morning.
Wow.
I don't know how many bankers are working that late, but in this case, it was one.
Well, that's a good recommendation. Let's call it an informal one. People's Bank is a fellow TAG sponsor, so we're happy to relay that. You mentioned that, or it was prior to this call, but sort of trends, your historical trends of sort of the numbers of businesses that you've supported, and I know that's gone up. What's give folks an idea of sort of your typical annual process and how coronavirus has affected that?
Sure. So in a typical year, our center will serve about 400 to 500 clients, depending on capacity of our staff, which has been pretty stable now with 4 of us for the last number of years. Typically our advising engagements are one-on-one personal meetings. Typically those are an hour to an hour and a half, so that'll explain the reason why. After the COVID impact, those numbers have gone up tremendously. So we've probably seen and touched more clients in the last couple of weeks than we will do in an entire year. So it's good to know that additional people are finding out about the program, largely through our education and outreach initiatives. So we've had hundreds of people participating in our various webinars. And then just a lot more referrals out there in the field for people directing clients to us to try and get answers to these questions, particularly on the SBA programming side of things.
Sure. And then one of our sort of themes is this collaborative approach to the rep. What is your role as that sort of integrates into Whatcom Unified Command and the Regional Economic Partnership and Team Whatcom?
So our lane is specifically just working with businesses to sustain those businesses, grow those businesses, or transition, whatever that may ultimately look like. So it really is just working one-on-one with the business owners to help them understand, what options are available to them, help them secure the funding that they need, whether that's specific program funding, whether that's trying to help them identify other ancillary sources of funding, or guiding and helping them develop new strategic business pivots, if you will. So I would say that's our lane.
Excellent. The previous question of sort of what is the near term future look like? I know that sort of first round of funding and grants are over, and what's sort of your next focus and your expectation for the next month or so?
Good question. So hopefully the funding gets replenished, number one. Number two, we see a second round of businesses get that funding.
Mm-hmm.
Then the ultimate question becomes, well, what will the new business normal look like? You know, how soon can some businesses reopen partially or reopen completely? And then what are the potential funding gaps based on those future limitations of the business model? So as you can imagine, the hospitality type sector, you know, might be one of the most challenged. If you say, okay, if we now have a restaurant that has X number of tables and they've been used to operating at a certain capacity and meeting their numbers, what happens if now we have to eliminate half of those tables to keep social distancing? You know, it's one thing to have some funding for some payroll right now, but until we can open and really start generating revenues and profits that go along with those revenues, what is the business funding position going to look like?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We have a few questions served up here. Crystal asked, has the money come in since the approval on the PPP? I think we covered that a little bit.
So yes, on previous applicants. So in the first tranche of money, yes, that has all been committed, and those folks that got in early are seeing those funds flowing into their bank accounts based on whenever they got the approval.
Mm-hmm.
So from approval, the banks have to disperse the funds within 10 days. The next round will be, you know, now with this, if the House passes and approves the funding package, the PPP program and the EIDL program will be replenished to some degree, and then a new round of funding will go out.
So pretty good chance that this will continue in waves until we get out of this.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you. You all have awesome resources on your website. Is there any specific one that you'd like to highlight?
So our primary one is the COVID resource page on the SBDC website. So that's where we're trying to keep all the programs updated and any alternative financing vehicles and grant opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'll share that here. And then I know you have some sort of standing webinars and other virtual experiences. What's next for you guys?
Probably just a continuation of those, and as new topic areas come up, we'll be adding additional content. So I don't know what the full slate will be over the next 3 or 4 weeks. We're kind of making it up as we go along.
Yeah, I think everybody's doing a fantastic job of that, I think. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I know the team has been wildly busy churning through all this business support. Any closing comments or any questions for Eric? All right, I'll transition into just kind of a thematic close. Thank you everyone for joining us today for TAG Cafeteria. We are obviously in the middle of the coronavirus here in Whatcom, and it was nice to connect with a lot of the organizations that are working on sort of the understanding how we proceed and how we recover. And this will obviously be developing. Our expectation is we'll do this maybe once a month or so, kind of a check-in, and hopefully that doesn't happen very many times, right? So that we can reduce the amount of time we're in this unknown period and get back to whatever that new normal is, like you mentioned there. So we'll transition to an open discussion format here. I know many of you are need to go to your next thing or whatnot, but it's basically just an opportunity for us to have some open conversation, and we just use this to connect ask questions and see each other's faces. So thank you, everyone.